Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending this webinar on how accelerators and incubators can fuel innovation in the smart protein sector. For those who are new to GFI India, we are part of a global network of non-profit think tanks working to advance and accelerate the smart protein sector. And the GFI Ideas India, the smart protein innovation community, is a platform for smart protein enthusiasts to connect, learn, and engage with everyone. So today's session is about addressing a crucial challenge that we have identified in this sector. That is, there is a gap between people who have great idea or an incredible product, but not knowing how to convert it into a business. Many entrepreneurs kind of hold back and have that hesitancy to take that one leap. So what we're going to do in this webinar is to cover this from the lens of accelerators and incubators and see how their programs can support these entrepreneurs to start their startup journey. And this webinar is going to feature 2 case studies, and that's going to be disseminated by our 2 expert speakers. And we are thrilled to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Nitya Raman, Senior Program Manager at CCAM. Dr. Nitya Raman is a biotechnologist with PhD in life science, with a deep passion for scientific communications for the biotech sector. With over a decade of academic research experience, she is responsible for managing labs for startups and entrepreneurs, organizing training and networking programs, and supporting translational research. Welcome, Dr. Nitya. Yeah, our second speaker. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Nitya. Our second speaker is Bharathwaj Sridhar, Investment Manager at Indiagram Labs Foundation, TBI. Bharathwaj Sridhar is a biotechnologist with 10 years of experience who later became an agroecologist. His entrepreneurial experience and management skills help in overcoming the stumbling blocks in the go-to-market strategy and business model refinement for startups. Welcome, Mr. Bharathwaj.
Absolute delight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're also so proud to have Sigma Squared Society India chapter as our network partner. Sigma Squared Society is a global community of young founders driving positive impact through entrepreneurship. Founded back in 2008, it supports early stage innovators with high growth potential, offering a network of mentors, industry leaders, and peers to help accelerate ventures across different sectors. Representing them today is their Indian executive, Debabrata Das, co-founder of ProPlant Foods Private Limited and a visionary food techno manager who leads innovative work in plant-based food to address food system challenge. A former GFI India fellow and EAR at IIT Kanpur, he champions sustainability and food security. Welcome, Debabrata.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So to kick off this webinar, I call upon Debabrata to speak on the critical role of accelerators and incubators on scaling the startup ideas, and he will be sharing his insights from his experience. Over to you, Debabrata.
Sure. Thank you so much, Fathima. And thank you, entire GFI team, for organizing this webinar. I think this will be fruitful for the youngsters, those who are coming into this sector. And I'll try to cover a bit more on what exactly this industry is looking forward to. So mainly towards the accelerators and the incubators, how it helps a new age ideas to take it to a commercial scale. So what exactly the journey we have gone through it, I'll just go it in a bit. And Bharathwaj sir mostly go in detail on how exactly you can able to get the grants and how you can able to excel the business overall. So if I mainly talk about for a idea, how exactly we have an idea, we mostly need to have some support and a handhold need to be done. So that time we mostly go towards the incubators. So incubators is basically early age startup supporters who help us to ideate from a very scratch idea to take it to a at least POC from the market point of view. So what benefits mostly get from it is basically it helps us to business development support skills, what exactly need to be done on the idea refinement. It mostly gives you the infrastructure, mentorship, financial aspects, along with the validations of what exactly the ideas we come up with. So now if you see normally for smart protein sector, there are multiple incubators already coming and in India and globally as well. So in India, mostly 400 incubators are currently available in India and globally more than 7,000 incubators are still available. And moving forward, when we move towards after the incubation period, we mostly move towards accelerators program. So what accelerators mostly provide us, it's fine. We have the product readily available with us. We know our initial POC is ready. Now we need a scalable business, how you can able to take it up. And there we need support to get more and more help from the industry leaders and those who have already done it. So accelerators helps us to make the things go from 1 to 10. So eventually you move, that helps with the networking opportunities, growth perspective on the programs, multiple growth programs they mostly do, networking events. Eventually move towards customer discovery as well as the investor connects. So where we need to go for fundraise, and as well as the connects what exactly need to be done to take the things move forward. It mostly have their alumni own connects and also the existing investors, those who have their own accelerators, they help the businesses as a mission aligned businessmen, they mostly do investments to take the industry ahead. So if I mostly talk about the Indian accelerators and the incubators, if you see, I'll go through the each one of them, but mostly in India, the active incubators and accelerators available in India, I'll preferably to move towards with the SIDBI as well as NABARD. They have multiple different grants which helps startups ideas to take it ahead. Eventually, all the departments has their own grants and possibilities, but move towards the smart protein. I believe all these sectors has the very key initial role they are playing on the entire ecosystem to build it up. For example, BIREC has multiple different grant opportunities for initial ideas on the product development side. So I'll go each one of them, how can you take it up. So these are some of the global accelerators, mostly smart protein innovators should definitely move forward with. For example, BIV, ProVeg Internationals, Food Tech. So there are a lot of multiple different incubators already available globally. And same with this, the Southeast Asian markets, there are Brink, which do a lot of help towards sustainability towards movement in terms of uh, uh, putting investments as well as take it ahead. Then if I move towards the Southeast Asian market, if you see in Singapore, they have big idea ventures. They are very much actively moving forward with investments as well as hand holding to enter the ecosystem. Now, NUS is also helping a lot of new innovations in plant-based sector as well as cell-based as well. So both on the sustainability side, they're putting a lot of effort on taking the companies ahead in the curve. Innovate 360 has very much aligned with the investments as well as with the key innovations which need to be done. So I'll go each one of them. So if you see normally, big idea ventures, they have big amount of chunks to put it up mainly on the plant-based industry. So they're committing $50 million of investments in totally towards the plant-based industry. ProVeg also has a lot of investments they have done, and they are backed by Veg Capital. So they're also investing a lot in the plant-based and sustainability itself. Along with that, all these incubators have multiple different mentors, so they help us to expand our business worldwide. So if I move towards the stage by stage growth funds, which need to be available with us at multiple different stages. Initially, when we have the idea stage, and which is like simple idea we want to do something on our own. And apart from that, we need some product in our hand. So we mostly go ahead with the Nidhi EIR, which provides 30,000 per month for entire year. So it helps anyone to move forward to the like conventional way of going for replacements or to some other working on other companies. Which preferably you have 30,000 per month. On that basis, you can take a risk and do your innovations, whatever it's coming on your way. And within the same time of period, you can definitely go with Nidhi Prayas, which gives you 10 lakhs rupees on executing the idea you have in the lab scale. Along with that, when you move ahead, when you have the initial prototype readily available with you in the lab scale, then you need deeper research on the same. When you go deeper research and you want to develop the product and like wanted to have your initial POC, I would prefer mostly go ahead with Nidhi SSS. It gives you 30 lakhs of funding in 3 different tranches. Then you can move ahead with direct seed, seed B. So all they have multiple different grants available for R&D as well as for the product commercialization. When we have the initial prototype readily available with us, and if we are totally towards a deep tech company, then you should definitely go for direct bid, which is reflects direct research fund, which comes with the 3 different tranches, and it gives you a liberty to go deeper research without diluting your equities. And eventually, you can move ahead with startup in the seed fund. It's simultaneously you can go forward to it. Startup in the seed fund mostly comes with 2 different ways, where initially they put around 20 lakhs on product commercialization. Eventually, you can move ahead with get 50 lakhs of loan at 4% interest rate. And with that, you can take that money and you can do your product commercialization. Eventually, you can do it. Then there is also multiple ways of Atal innovation. So they also have 50 lakhs of research and prototype grants. So I have prepared an entire list of incubators, accelerators, as well as the grants available in India and abroad. I'll definitely love to share with you. If I believe it might help you because when exactly we started, we made the entire list on our own to make it available and see what we can able to grab from it. Because the time we have started in India, it's like in 2021, and at that time there are very few incubator accelerators they know about this space. So we have to go and educate them, and then you can able to get such funds. So there is a hook into it. I definitely understand like sustainability, everything works perfectly well in the under deep tech science, but this also resonate with agriculture sector. But most of the companies they don't prefer agriculture grants because they believe this is not from our sector. To be very frank, we can definitely move ahead and go ahead towards the agriculture sector as well, because we also got multiple grants from agriculture sector. Because ultimately we are giving benefits to the raw material what exactly you are using in the plant-based industry. So, for example, we use mung tea and so the core ingredient. So in that, we directly connect with the farmers. So in that way, also we can able to get multiple different grants from RTP or Aftar. So they have two different ways. Initially, you can get 5 plus 10. It's a 10 lakh grant in the prototype stage. So all these grants you can take simultaneously and you can move ahead with that. And eventually, you have to decide like in what stage what you need. So this PPT along with the it's stage by stage you have to move ahead with, because if you take like 25 initially, you can't go back and get the 10 lakhs rupees fund. So you have to go stage by stage to make yourself available for other different ways and possibilities to get more and more grants. So the main aspects post grant is basically to give the progress report, financial audits, everything need to be done, and side visits they must be do as a compliance basis. And eventually you have to move forward with like documentation and all the compliances. So Bharathwaj has mostly moved ahead with much more detailed way. I'm not going much deeper on that. Apart from that, Sigma Square Society is a society which we have started off like in 2012. And currently, we are presently available in 33 countries worldwide. And this community is mainly led by multiple founders at multiple different ways. We are totally sector agnostic, but we have 1,000 plus active fellow founders worldwide, and those who have already raised more than $2 billion uh, in other regions, mainly active in Europe and US, and now moving ahead. And we started the India chapter as well. So in India, what exactly we are looking forward to is how we can help the like-minded people. What need to be done? Basically, we wanted to give the youngsters. So we mostly take the fellows, those who started their journey early 20s. So you have to come and join us before 26, like within the age of 26, and we try to connect with you, the stakeholders, those who have done the same industry, and you can connect with global players, those who already done the same thing, the same investments, the same kind of steps they move forward with. You can connect with them, and we also connect with you and be very much aligned with what exactly the problem we are facing, and we'll try to solve it within the community. And along with that, we have multiple different expert panels, those who also help you to expand your businesses worldwide and in India as well. So we have multiple different chapters. We currently are running 38 chapters in 5 different continents. And eventually we have like 60 plus core team members worldwide. And we are trying to deliver on the same. So I'll just give you a quick glimpse of why you should join Sigma. So Sigma is basically how the key benefits we do. We have a very strong community. It's a very strong community in terms of all the founders. And I already told you it's a segment agnostic. We also do summit. It's a global summit, which happens twice in a year, in mostly in London and Spain, and there we connect with multiple different partners as well as investors. We also do investors connects on content like segment wise, agnostic wise. We have a database of multiple investors, and in all the different ways. So any startups who are looking forward to raise funds on any different ways, we'll directly connect or maybe be a bridge between investors as well as the startup those are moving forward with. Then we do multiple local events. So, for example, entrepreneurship journey is very, very lonely. But what exactly we do multiple different community events and in different ways, co-working spaces, co-working weeks, startup co-working. So we do trips, we do a lot of multiple events. We don't do much publicity in terms of getting the traction, but it's only nomination based. So those who are nominated, we can't directly apply. We have to reach out to any of the fellows. And if the fellow feel like you are suitable for this community, then we'll move ahead and go ahead and take you in this uh, uh, joining us as a Sigma fellow. Then we mostly do brand success events, and apart from that, we mostly do uh, year-long application process. So where in two different ways we takes in. It's a rolling basis nominations we do. So if any one of you are interested to be a part of this vibrant community, do reach out to any of our fellows. Those who are available in India. I think in India currently we have 15-20 members currently available. So you can do connect with them and you can uh, showcase yourself what exactly currently you are doing and you can get nominated by themselves. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll share some of the insights which you have previously done. So I'll try to share the incubations list which we have. So in this list, we have mentioned all the accelerators which is currently available India and abroad. So this is for us, we have done. Okay, along with that, all this data is mainly sector agnostic, mainly focused on the smart protein sector. Mainly the challenges, accelerators, and what kind of fund size they have. Government grants, which is available currently in India, apart from the international grants as well. So I'll try to share all this list also with you guys. And yeah, thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debabrata. That's such a super informative talk. There are a lot of information. You actually have 4 questions.
Sure.
The first one is what helped you decide which accelerator and incubator was the right fit for you at different points in your journey? What were the factors you considered?
So I think it totally depends on stage by stage. So the initial days, we mostly move ahead with a support where basically you get the lab access as well as some small funds which is available with them. But it's very disheartening in India because initially for the grant for the deeper research, no one is mostly interested to put money as an investors. So we have to move ahead with go with multiple different grants. But the main problem with the grant is it takes longer time to deploy the funds, and the time it takes, it's very difficult for us to like execute the things, and it takes longer time period. So I believe stage by stage you have to follow. Initially, if you need to do more research, move ahead with the uh, existing equipment support, lab supports already they have. Along with that, do they have multiple different government policies where they can put the funds? Apart from that, you have to move ahead and see some international investors that are interested to put money. For example, for us in our journey, Provage International initially put money in us, and then it helps us to grow the R&D what we exactly have done. We have tried to get multiple grants, but it longer time period for us to get the grant hit in our account. So see, without money, it's very difficult to do any job. So I believe you have to take some sensible decision, understanding what way you can move ahead with. But don't miss any opportunities. I believe government grants is also very much equally important because it takes time, but it's without equity. So it's definitely a better choice to move ahead with. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
And another question on, do you feel that program fees charged by most incubator and accelerator programs are worth the value add?
It depends. It totally depends. If they're putting money in the company, I would say definitely yes. For example, if any of the incubators are interested to move ahead and give you startup and a seed fund, which is like 20 lakhs, and you are just diluting 1 or 2% of your company, I think that's a safe bet to go ahead with because incubators never had their intention to make money of that business. Their main intention is to help and nurture the startups to move ahead in a upper scale. But ultimately, if you do good with 1-2% doesn't make any difference in a company. But eventually, if that startup is doing very well and the incubators are interested to put money, then if they're doing some follow-up investments, at that time you have the bigger chunk and they will definitely try to help you to raise more and more funds. So I would definitely say it's worthwhile to go ahead. But without any funding, I won't prefer to give any equity to any incubators because ultimately there are multiple incubators available in India. So the what exactly the startup mostly uh, can't able to take decisions is basically they don't compare. So we can easily compare multiple incubators at the same time. What we believe if we're applying on any one incubator, we directly go ahead and take the money. For example, if Nidhi assesses someone is giving me 30 lakhs and any other incubator is giving me 15 lakhs. But if I instantly go ahead with taking that 15 lakhs, I can't go back and take the 30 lakhs instantly because I have taken all the decisions and I can only avail the grant only once in one company. So it's preferably to go ahead and see the maximize utilization of that same scheme and get the maximum fund from the incubator. If not, then I would say go for other incubators. Don't settle for less. There are multiple ways to move ahead with.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very clear answer. Thank you so much for that. And we
Yep,
have 2 more questions on Sigma Square. So
sure.
first is, can a student join Sigma Square or is it only for entrepreneurs? I think it's for entrepreneurs below the age of 26, right?
Yeah, so students also very much welcome, but we don't. take by seeing as a whether it's student, we mostly take understanding what impact you have done and what things we have done to make something different from what others are doing. So basically, within the 26, you have to prove yourself that what new things you have done and what the kind of passion you have on building something. But not by having a concept, you have to execute things and you have to prove yourself why exactly you want to be a part of this community and what kind of help you need and what kind of opportunity you're looking forward to. So in all the different ways, we evaluate a particular candidate and then we see if they fit in the community and then we mostly take in.
Yeah, the next question is kind of a follow-up
Yeah,
question, but from a different participant. How do you find a list of the fellows? I think it's in relation to the question that you mentioned about recommending.
yeah. So we don't basically open up applications for founders to directly apply. So what we do a nomination round. So for example, so we have two different ways of selection. There's a local round, then there's a global round. So in the local round, the existing fellows, they will, so the founders, those who are interested to be a part of it, they try to have some connection with the existing fellows. You have to justify yourself what exactly you are doing. If that fellow understands and see the value in you, they will do the nominations uh, to the, if they will evaluate and then put the nominations. With that nominations, we go ahead and we do local interviews. So there will be three local interviews. For example, in India, we have three local interviews. If you cross the three different interviews and if you get the green signal, then we move ahead with the three global interviews. So from three global interviewers, multiple different uh, places, they will evaluate yourself. And if there is this, they see the value in you, yeah, you are getting and you'll be a part of Sigma Fellow.
That's a very intensive process, but totally worth it, I believe. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's it, the questions for you, Debabrata. Thank you so much. There were a lot of
Thank you
information.
so much.
And please share all the resources with it. We will be sharing it with the participants in our follow-up mail.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think we
Uh,
can want. Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead. Is there anything you
no,
want?
I'll drop down in the chat box itself so people can
Okay.
easily able to access it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be perfect. Thank you so much, Devabrata. Yeah. And we can move on to our case study discussion. The first case study for this evening is how an accelerator or incubator can support someone working on the deep tech smart protein idea, such as cell cultured meat or precision fermentation. And to talk about it, I call upon Dr. Nitya. Over to you, Dr. Nitya.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful input, Mr. Das, onto the incubator and accelerator network, especially in the Indian ecosystem, touching upon certain international agencies as well. So I'll just give you a brief overview. My presentation is not very organized, but I'll just try to touch upon most of the aspects that has been here. So yeah, so just a little bit of input from the GFI team as well as some of the statistics all over. I just wanted to touch upon these aspects because this kind of have an impact as to where the entire industry has been heading to as far as the smart protein is concerned. So basically, if you look at it in India itself, you have 103 plant-based cultivated or fermented protein startups, and these are the statistics that we have as on 22-23 financial year. In the year 21-22 alone, the total investment amount has come up to $17 million. But please understand that these investments are usually on the levels of commercialization, not on the early stages. As Mr. Das just mentioned, that the early stage investments are, usually a high risk investment going forward, and therefore grants are usually preferred. But one thing over here that if you have to look at is people actually who have tried alternative meat or strategies or products, they have kind of made a kind of balance between an alternative protein or a smart protein when compared to the natural proteins that are generally available in the market without any cultivation or fermentation as such. So, what are the five trending alternative protein sources in Europe? And this actually has had a multitude of relevance, mirrored relevance, if I may put it so, even in India. So first thing is coming in the meat and the dairy analogs industry. Second one is in the cultured or cultivated meat. Third thing is in the lines of derived proteins and edible insects, and then comes to into the microalgae or the seaweed kind of ecosystem. Now, where does this have an impact? Primarily, it's on lowering the carbon footprint, and this has been one of the causative, running reasons as to why people are preferring alternate meat sources in order to largely lower the carbon footprint. So this basically is a chart where if you see the life cycle emissions between the animal feed, the raw materials, etc. And this is again something that has been derived in 2022, where the talk about smart proteins actually peaked in India as well as abroad. Now, as far as the animal protein market is concerned, with the volume expected, it is expected to reach about 531 million tons. But please understand that the average consumption is actually very much different in different, segments of the world. So this also has an effect on your commercialization strategies going forward, as well as when compared to the consumption rates, in various statistics. So over here, this kind of gives you a relevance as to how you kind of place your global competitive landscape when compared to the Indian competitive landscape. Now, please understand that the global landscape is much more evident in this field when compared to the Indian landscape, although it is blooming. Now, coming to a case study, I would like to put it in a general format. So primarily at CCAMP, we've had at least 20 plus companies that have had an impact in the field of, smart protein. Largely, they are either working on creating new dairy producing microbes, or they are into precision fermentation, or they are into food formulation. So basically, dairy producing microbes can be of genetic changes. They can be of, doing it on multiple times where they cultivated multiple times. Sometimes precision fermentation is towards a feast stock where it is targeted to a particular segment of alternative proteins. And then food formulation comes in where, there is a combination of these alternative proteins, maybe in mixture with the natural sources or independent into food that is generated that actually realizes faster commercialization. Now, the unique prediction models for microbes usually starts with a very stringent strain selection. Basically, you get to know which microbes you have to work with, which is the microbes that you may have to, go ahead with respect to your scale-up strategies as well as upstream bioprocessing. Then after that, you kind of engineer your strains either with cloning or with other genetic modifications. You select your substrate either from natural sources or from chemical sources. This can also be as per your usual, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphate kind of a footprint. And then you go ahead and scale it up further with upstream bioprocessing or downstream bioprocessing. Second case study comes with a precision fermentation where, the cultivated meat is made in the lab or in a controlled environment by taking a sample of animal cells that are already available under the natural environment. Now, please understand that some of these processes are highly regulated as well. So it kind of becomes a little difficult to navigate through the certifications and other processes. But recently from FSSAI, there has been a lot of development in this field as far as policy making is concerned. Some of the discussions in which CCAMP has also party too. So first thing, what you do over here, you kind of purchase animal cell lines that probably are preserved in repositories, and they are open. You should ensure, considering that you will be having a commercial impact, you should be aware of the fact that these cell lines are to be used for commercial prospects. Second thing, you grow them in volume and increase their density, and then you come up to an optimal density either by fermentation or otherwise, and then you get it harvested, which then gets into a distribution criteria where it is textured and formed into a packaging which is there for storage and distribution. easily said and done, but usually these are the processes that people follow towards precision fermentation. The third is the food formulation strategy. So the food formulation strategy can actually start from three different sources. One is from the industry itself. So the industry itself gives you certain aspects in which, they tell you that, look, this kind of food is getting a bit costlier, the natural sources are dying out, so we need to have an alternate strategy in place. Or you can either develop one thing from new microorganisms that may or may not be genetically inclined, and traditional biomass fermentation where you can make it into a beverage or you can make it into a meat or a dairy food. All of this can be adhered to certain aspects when it comes to sustainability, nutritional quality, sensorial quality, as well as product diversity. So over here, what usually happens is that you kind of do the fermentation part, but then you direct it only to a certain food product like beverages or meat and dairy foods. Now, coming to certain alternates that have been in the market when compared to opposite things. So when the natural product, I think the one that has come from chicken breasts, which may be raw, beef burgers, chicken egg or wheat flour. We have seen a lot of input coming in from the alternate protein segments like corn mince, just the egg, cell line of the egg, or from the crickets has also made an impact. So primarily, sometimes what happens is that these nutritional profiles that you have created either from the three categories that I have mentioned earlier will have to go through their nutrient profiles as well. So you will have to chart out something where, you can include it into the food diary, which is usually the general intake of an everyday person. And then you make an event out of it where, certain aspects are included into it. There is an ingredient breakdown where then you have a gram for gram replacement and the nutrient profiles, and then compare the nutrient profiles statistically into the environment or into the personal that you are targeting. Now, over here, the ingredient breakdown becomes the most critical part, and the gram for gram replacement has to be on par with your natural sources. So these two features become very important in any case study that you are going forward with. Certainly, as far as the mass market is concerned, there are relative challenges into the alternative protein segment. Sorry to be the bearer of the law the devil's news here, but certainly you will have to understand whether the alternates are affordable, they are accessible, as well as there is an acceptability. So affordability comes from the price standpoint. So it's because you will be working with cell lines, you may be working with genetics, you may be working with alternative proteins. There's a lot of raw material cost that goes into the place, and you will have to ensure that your manufacturing process is scalable. This, of course, comes to the first segment that Mr. Das had covered with respect to partnerships between the startups and the industry, and also with the infusion of private and public funding. Second thing is the accessibility, where you will have to declare your safety data, where the R&D, wherever you're doing your clinical trials, your safety trials, are all research organizations that have been accredited as well as legally identified to do the data analysis in order to circumvent any potential health risks that may be involved. And after you do the whole of it, you should ensure that the texture, taste, and appearance of that particular product is in line with the natural product that you're trying to replace. So all of this requires partnerships, it requires integrated research, and it requires funding. Now, the incubation program services, I would just like to give a brief overview as to how this is. I think the next speaker is going to go into detail into all of these. So primarily, as far as a incubation program service is concerned, they primarily act as a wonderful buffer for infrastructure, facility-based services, business services, financing, connectivity, access to knowledge, which is basically with your mentors or with industrial counterparts, brand building, management of the program, and secretariat services. And as part of the Indian ecosystem, you have all of these accelerators and incubators that are part of it. So social incubators, academic incubators are basically incubators that are part of an academic setup or a university. You have virtual as well as in-person or physical business incubators. You have kitchen incubators that are basically makeshift incubators where you can go ahead and do certain aspects of your program. Corporate incubators basically are incubators or organizations that give you access to huge funding opportunities like your Series A or your Series C. Seed accelerators are accelerators that come in where they have certain aspects that they will have very critical reasoning to or your trial designs or anything. And then you have the venture capitalists that become an incubator system in itself. Now, coming to the incubators and accelerators, what basically are the differentiation between the two is one is the incubator basically is a structured and a collaborative program where it is designed to help startups right from the ideation stage. So you have guidance, you have funding, you have presentation skills. We will also let you know how to input on certain things. What are you supposed to tell in certain places? You will also be able to understand and gauge what is the etiquette in which you will have to go forward with. Secondly, when you come to the accelerator, it is basically a short-term program, probably for a year or more, probably 2 or 3 years, where there is primary focus on rapid growth with a set time frame of and business profitability and industry connections are something that we will be looking at as far as the accelerator program is concerned. Now, the ecosystem in CCAMP has a good mix of both of them individually as well as together. So there are some incubators that have acceleration programs, and there are also exclusive accelerators that are also present in the Indian ecosystem. Now, coming to the incubators, please understand that they have a potential to have the knowledge, skill, development, all of which that supports the idea and also have very critical brainstorming sessions going forward. So the startup phases are usually these when it comes to India. One would be the ideation phase where you are trying to do some research and understand the idea and the concept. And this is very heavy when it comes to guidance and primarily comes into the section of an incubator, right? Secondly, when it comes to the conception phase, you will have to understand whether you have a business, for example, who will be your target customers, and you will start working on your scientific ideology behind the thing. So over here, you will need a lot of expert guidance going forward, and these experts have to be critical to your field of area going forward. Second thing is the committing phase as well as the validation phase, where you will be engaging in a lot of grants and a lot of funding opportunities, probably to a quantum of less than 1 CR. And then you will be looking at understanding the product market fit. Again, this product market fit although comes very relevantly in the validating phase, this is something that you will have to conceptualize with your experts right when you are in the early stages. And then you will have to have a very good understanding of the deep customer knowledge. Then following which comes the scaling and the establishment phase, where you have your Series A, Series B kind of funding. And also you will require very specific go-to-market strategies as well as accelerator programs. This is again basically what any incubation program will actually give you. Just the technical ecosystem, the laboratory in case you require any, and then the active support for IP, access to funding as well as office space. Now, when it comes to a startup, usually you have the ideation phase, you have the prototype stage, and then you have the scale-up stage, where you have the infrastructure and the capital that comes into the ideation. And then you have the prototype stage where you start working on your different technology. I mean, you start working on your technology, and there are people to give you a capital boost to actually take the, take it up to a scale up stage. Now, coming to the cultivated meat industry, usually, when it comes to the ecosystem of business, what exactly is provided to startups, right? One would be inputs. So you will have to know where your cells would be growing, what would be your media formula, where are you going to do your bioreactor designs, etc. And these are all the inputs that happens especially in the ideation phase and in the conceptualization phase. Now then you start working on your idea, making it into a probably MVP at the end of it. So for this you would have to have an ecosystem that is able to sustain cell line studies, production facilities, as well as downstream processing. Again, the incubator or the accelerator that you are interested in should have some access to at least people or connects that can help you understand or connect you with distribution channels. Now, the best part about all of these three aspects on a screen is you need not have all the three in a single ecosystem. So you need not search for a single incubator that can actually provide inputs, production, and distribution. You may probably have certain incubators that may have their strengths in inputs rather than in production. There might be people who are very good with getting you into distribution connects once you have completed your production part of it and all of that. So always in India, you will have to understand, India or globally for that matter, it is very important for you to have a good relation with sister incubations network. Second thing is you will have to have an idea in any case study or in any, especially in the cultivated meat segment, you will have to have a short-term plan after you have completed your proof of concept. So basically, in the first 5 years after you have completed your proof of concept, you may have to get into understanding regulatory support, refining the cell line to reduce cost, and then getting into continued investments. Midterm would be to surge in small scale commercialization, boost and refinement of the process to make it cost effective, comparatively cost effective, and then you will have to start branding and marketing. The long term would be your commercial availability in supermarket, getting it vetted by FSSAI or other agencies, and then finally you would be able to achieve a reduced carbon footprint. Now, I understand a few of you would have some statements about the entrepreneurs and the deep tech entrepreneurs. There are some statements that I feel in the last half decade that I've been in the funding ecosystem as a part of CCAMP, that these are the reasons that I usually get from people when they're looking at raising funds. The first thing is they feel that it's very difficult for deep tech ventures to actually find suitable applications. Again, this is very large and wide. You will have to do a lot of homework. So thank you, Mr. Das, for putting in your efforts into that and sharing the link for others in this meeting. Second thing is pitching to the investors. You will have to tell us what exactly do we look at. There is no point in just playing to your strengths, but you will have to also pay to the strengths that the investor should look at. Like, for example, the way you pitch for a granting agency is very different from the way you pitch to an investor. And these kind of critical differences can actually be undertaken as part of your mentorship sessions with the incubators that you have in Connect. I'm pretty sure, in addition to CCAM GFI, as well as, Indiagram and other, also have a very structured program on mentorships as well. Then they say that the limited exposure to investors is actually the main reason why. The fact is that entrepreneurs are, it is very important for you to understand that it's a very high risk project. And in a field like smart proteins, there are multiple people who are starting their ventures in the same field, but not everybody, reaches to a stage where they can even talk to an investor. So it's very important for you to keep deep diving into every aspect of your R&D or of your connects. And then there is more security with grants rather than equity funding. In the early stages, yes, but as you go forward, as you mature in your technical readiness level, it is very important for you to realize that equity funding is actually the buffer that will take you forward and that will drive you forward, because people like, be it strategic investors, be it VCs or be it angels, they have very strict policy on why and how they will be selecting certain startups that they are interested in. So if you are in the line of sight of them, then it definitely comes with some backing that helps you take things forward faster. Otherwise, when you are with grants, it helps you realize your R&D potential. It kind of makes you technically very strong. But then the grant funding is, something that is wider. It kind of helps you establish a foundation that is which wide and but not directed towards a particular step going forward. And then the limited interest from the investors regarding deep tech is slowly changing, at least in the last decade or half a decade. We have seen a lot of interest coming in with multiple agencies going forward. And then they have lack the scientific or the engineering expertise, true to a certain level, I would say. But it is ecosystems like CCamp and Indiagram who actually kind of bridge the understanding between the investor and the startup going forward. Now, I understand that each of you would be relating to all of these, but please understand that if you feel that all the things that I covered below are one of the main reasons, then please understand that getting connected to the right ecosystem, as far as getting your connects with the investors is concerned, would be the most on priority. Second thing is, why is I would say the interest in smart protein space slowly getting a lot of interest. One thing is the deep tech total investments in the technology is slowly rising across all the parallels that are directly and indirectly associated with the alternative protein space. And another huge bonus to the whole thing is that the cost of the cultivated meat has come down faster than genome sequencing as far as US, UK, India, and Germany is concerned. So this is something that actually boosts the interests in the investors when it comes to investing into a alternate protein space based company. Second thing is the willingness of the customers to actually pay a premium, although the rates are quite high for the protein alternates when compared to the regular alternates. The consumers are currently ready to pay a premium when compared to such products. And secondly, the acceptance of the cultivated meat is expected to reach $25 billion by the end of 2030. So all of this is already set as far as statistics is concerned. Now, I would say that the rest of it depends on you being possible players, global players in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, how can a cultivated meat scale up for a global industry? One, you will have to figure out the raw materials of the supply chain. Second, you will have to streamline your manufacturing process. Third is basically creating easy scale up designs going forward. Fourth is have an in detail analysis of the entrepreneurial opportunities that may present to you going forward. Fifth thing is something that is of critical relevance to the entire industry on the whole, but it also becomes an important responsibility if you are going to be a startup founder in this field, is basically you will have to accept the fact that there are going to be challenges as far as the consumer is concerned. Second thing, what you can base this on is the environmental benefits of cultured meat. Nutritional aspects, health is something of utmost importance. And the last but the most crucial thing is you will have to have an understanding of the regulatory landscape and public perception. Now, I do not want to end this on a negative note, but please understand that there is a downside to every startup that you should have. So always have management as far as the stakeholders are concerned, keep the staff involved, keep the investors involved, extend the runway, definitely go forward. Like, for example, if you feel that a particular funding opportunity will give you a runway of about 2 years, ensure that you are 6 months out and preparing for the worst. So, for example, I always tell people who are the investee cohort of CCamp or the grantee cohort of CCamp is that, okay, you have received a grant for an 18-month period. At the end of 6 months or the day they sign the agreement with us, I tell them, okay, what are you doing for alternate funds? So that is where you actually go on. And then secondly, another crucial aspect in this entire slide would be number 7, which is on the intellectual property part. You will have to figure out which aspects would be legally binding so that you don't have to get into other core unnecessary legal obligations. So whatever you are ideating for as far as a startup, it is very important that you will have to have a legal binding as far as the proprietary of the technology is concerned. So thank you for that, and open to any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Nitya. That was super informative talk. Really loved it. And you have about two questions, and there was a third question which was answered by Mr. Bharathwaj and Debabrata. You can answer that as well. Unfortunately, since we are running out of time, would you mind typing in your answer for the participants to view? And we can move on with Mr. Bharathwaj's speech. Yeah. And yeah, so this is going to be the last of the second case study of this evening. How accelerators and incubator can help an entrepreneur scale a smart protein product idea developed in a home kitchen or a lab. For example, like a chickpea-based cheese slice. I have particularly included this example because Mr. Bharathwaj, I had this product developed in my undergraduate year. So I would love to know about this. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, lovely. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation by Dr. Nitya, Raman, and Debabrata. So I was enthralled by their presentation totally, and it actually gave me a lot of insights. So I would like to make this session as interactive as possible so that the participants, we can engage during the conversation as well. So how many of you are startups here? You can raise your hand or do a motion so that like we can have an understanding.
Yeah, so there is some backend settings to minimize the interaction with the participants. One second, let me just turn on the raise hands feature so people can raise their hands. Yeah,
Fathima, I just did that. Yeah.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
We have about 3 entrepreneurs here, Mr. Bharathwaj.
Lovely. So what I would say is like kind of it's amazing being an entrepreneur and especially being in a space of alternative protein because it comes from a lot of passion. And also you have a not only look at like building an organization, but building an organization with purpose towards sustainability and that is something which is quite amazing. So kudos to all of you. I would like to know in the sense is are you guys at an ideation stage or you just moved on a little bit? The entrepreneur specifically?
Yeah, you can answer in Q&A, entrepreneurs. Like 3 of you have raised your hands. Please answer in the Q&A chat box.
Yeah. Or maybe yeah, sure. So what I would say is like kind of anyway, if you're taking once when do you approach an incubator, something which is very important. So today, as Ms. Fathima told about, I was looking about a kitchen incubator of looking at having a chickpea and I want to make something from it. And is that the stage you talk to an incubator? I would say that is very, very early. I have some chickpea flour, then I want to make something. Can you help me? Most incubators would say, in sense, come up with a plan and then we can consider you. So as an entrepreneur, I have been an entrepreneur, so I was very fortunate being one. So ran the organization for 4 years, 4.5 years, did about 15 million revenues in hydroponics, aquaponics, and those kind of spaces, apart from dairy. So I would say in the sense is at a business incubator for an introduction level, I would say have a minimum viable product. That would be the point at which you need to get into it. Without an MVP, it would be very difficult for somebody to assess on what you're going to make. So you can say, I am having a PhD from Cornell, but what are you going to make? Are you going to make chickpea flour for something or you're going to make something else? One of the very interesting things is about have a vision of what you're building and why you're building it. This becomes the most important thing because that will give features on which kind of incubator you're going to access to. So here I'm going to talk about going into features of incubators and then going into case study of Indiagram labs in this presentation. A business incubator is something to help startups. So a business incubator is a typical incubator. They mainly look at management training, looking at facilitating the POC, funding, creating a strong value for the entrepreneur and driving the entrepreneur with milestone-based objectives in terms of revenues and in terms of are they able to raise more funds, or the primary objective is to grow the organization as quickly and as fast as possible to look at a subsequent round of funding. This should be the major role of predominantly business incubator style in which they help startups. Then there are other kinds of incubators. There are academic incubators who are from universities like IIT, IIM, and those kind of places where they look at like kind of what is the background of the founding team, how technical they are to be contributed. Then they are looking at private incubators. Then there is sector-focused incubators. Indiagram Labs is one. C Camp is definitely one as well. Then there is impact incubators who look at specific areas in which they want to create impact. So what is a business incubator? A business incubator, as I already told you, gives access to organizations supposed to growth of startups with an agreement. Most of the times what happens is once they like you, they give an incubation agreement for 6 months, 1 year or 3 years. If it's an acceleration, it could be 2 years. If it's a short-term incubation, it could be 6 months. So what they ask in return, either they ask for, in the sense is service fee, or they can monthly rental charges, or they could look at advisory equity or investment equity and those kind of activities and how they are willing to support the startup. So most of these incubators, what happens is this equity, they'll have to, once it's realized, they'll have to reinvest in other startups. That's how they are able to survive. So at the point at which the protein space is concerned, I would say in the sense of POC validation and getting access to grants and schemes would be the majority role at the POC level of most of these incubators. I would say in the sense of some academic incubators such as AIE, IMA. So what happens is some of the notable startups here are looking at more of a technological point of view. Clean tech and social is where they are looking at. When you're applying to an incubator, you have to be very clear on your focus area. Don't just apply to any incubator because you see, okay, it is IIM, it should be a good incubator. If I'm looking at, are you into IT communication or are you into protein space? If you're into clean tech protein space, check their portfolio of companies if they have invested in some kind of protein companies, or they have incubated protein companies. What are those companies? If they have invested, how many companies have they invested in? This will give a good idea for the entrepreneurs and other people to check at like kind of what would be the engagement. And then once you have to identify these companies, go and speak to those companies. For example, if a company they have invested and they have grown a little bit, check if they have benefited from the incubation. So you just check with those companies through their LinkedIn network. You can just chat in the census. Wanted to understand about your startup and your experience at IIME and how has that helped your startup. And I would like to consider applying for the same. So other incubators, in the sense, is like kind of looking at these kind of incubators. I'm just showing an example. Private incubators, a lot of private incubators are there. So where they look at seed capital and these kind of incubators, private incubators, the majority would be to look at equity-based investments, and they want to have their returns in 7 years. I'm putting a number over here. Why? Because what happens is these incubators want to have to recirculate the capital and get back more money to invest. So am I ready to give them an exit in a period of 5 to 7 years? That is a kind of a planning a startup needs to make. If, coming back, if my chickpea flour is going to be a falafel, it can be an immediate business for a restaurant. If my chickpea flour, I'm looking at a modification at the genome level, at the chickpea level, and I want to introduce more of the chickpea to number of farmers who want to grow the chickpea as an alternative protein, as a super rich chickpea or something like that, then it is going to probably take me 2-3 years down in the research itself, identifying the right kind of genome sequence and how I can improve the protein characteristics on altering the same. So that will take a little bit of a time. Am I the right kind of a fit for a private incubator? Does the private incubator have the facilities, like for example, C Camp is having, to help me with certain kind of fermentation and downstream processing and other kinds of technologies? Do I have to rent this outside? Those are all the contingency planning you need to do. And after I make the chickpea protein or the chickpea, the super protein enriched chickpea, which can be given for farmers, are you ready to, in the senses, what is your vision after that? You made the product now. How do you fit it into the market? Are you going to say in senses like, no, I'm going to advertise? No, that is a very bad idea to do it. How do I make sure that I go through the right kind of channel? I'm taking an example here, even though I'm in a different slide. Let us take an example of chickpea. how is the market of seed breeding companies going into the market? There are traders, there are in the sense different kinds of channels in which they are advertising. Can I use their channels to sell my product? How many traders are there? Or should I go through village trader? Should I go to a stockist and help in selling my product? Or should I directly approach a seed company to sell my product as their product in terms of white labeling? So those are all the strategies which you need to have planning. Which should be the best strategy for the product to take to the market? So once you have a understanding of that, that will be very easy for you to plan. Don't just make a product because it's excellent for the ecosystem and the environment, but think very deep about how the product is going to take to the market, which is the best market or the strategy to take it to the market. So Indiagram Labs is an organization where we fund startups from 25 lakhs to about 50 lakhs on an average. Average is 25 lakhs, I would say. Agtech and food tech. And the food tech is where the protein space comes in. Some of our startups include, I would say in the sense is, one of the interesting conversations I had, I'm keeping it in a very casual manner, interactive, because these are important points. One startup, which is called Genexus Biotech, where we have invested in the startup for 25 lakhs recently. They were making a protein platform and they were looking at what kind of protein should I create to which market. Initially, they were looking at a pharmaceutical market. So what happened was pharmaceutical market, they were analyzing the number of regulatory challenges they need to go to take the product to different kinds of markets. So they look, and then what we identified would be the best product market fit in terms of accelerating their growth was to look at the creams and other kinds of face creams and other kinds of products which are very, very active in Korea and those kind of markets. And they are getting a lot of traction in Japan and Korea to take it forward. How do I produce alternative proteins using my protein platform, which we have created in a lab? And how do you take it to the market and which is the right market for me immediately? Because these startups, most of our protein startups, I have to say, the difficult part is they need to understand which would be what is their current financial position. How long can they keep, as Dr. Nitya has highlighted, how long they can keep their cash burn running, or in the sense is keep it alive. When do I take it market? How fast do I make it a commercial business? So those kind of clarity needs to be developed. Either from the entrepreneur themselves or from experts and advisors who need to be part of their panelists. So that will be an important part. So here, if you say this is Unlimited India is an incubator for social entrepreneurs. So social causes is where they essentially invest. So this is a Mumbai-based startup, and they are looking at different kinds of social investments. Is my startup going to help the last mile in the rural village? How are those people going to be benefited from from using the product? So those are the aspects you need to look at. When you look at not only how you're going to take it to the market, analyzing the investor is an important aspect. So there are diverse objectives for a business for an thing. First thing is, I would say, business investment is to first commercialize ideas. As I told earlier, first create on commercializing your idea. If you guys are not familiar, create a business model canvas around your idea and take it forward. Then think about how much of employment is it going to generate in that particular sector. If I'm in this alternative protein space, which is the market I'm going to either break and bring more people into this sector. What is the innovation I'm creating which should spur more amount of activity and more kind of investments directed towards the sector? And further, next step would be to develop a new sector within the protein space and looking at sustainability in not only in terms of the ecological value, but also from an economical perspective as well. So that is how we have to plan in a step-by-step manner. So the ownership of variables that affect an incubator, I would say, in the sense of business model, would be what kind of ownership? It is an NGO, is it a university, is it a government entity? What is the nature? Is it a for-profit or not for-profit? That's going to make a big difference. As I told earlier, a for-profit would look at a 5 to 7 year exit, and a not-for-profit might still wait for a lot of time. Area of activity, is it going to be technology used? They want the startup to use particular technology. One of the government programs which we are part of is called as MIGHTY, where they emphasize that the startup has to use some kind of IoT or internet-based services in their activity. So so protein startups who are also having an IoT domain into it would be interesting for them. So that those are all some specifics you need to take into perspective while applying for the thing. So incubators, main purpose I've already highlighted a couple of times already. I'll take you through the incubation model, which should be the most viable for a startup. I would say, in the sense, is first level is where we understand the founder. At the early stage, what the most important thing, does the founder have a clarity to build a business? So we have had founders who are much more qualified than me, but they lacked a vision on how they are going to build an organization. So we had to filter out those applications, because in the sense is we can't bet on a founder who doesn't have a vision. A vision is something which is very important on what they want to do and why they want to do it. Second is, while we having a network of applications, we have a selection process on which how the founder is able to fit, whether they are irrespective of their academic or their personal backgrounds. Then we do an incubation. After our due diligence, we do an incubation. And predominantly for the protein startups, we do a cohort-based mentoring. This is very important because it helps not only the entrepreneur and a cohort-based mentoring, but there is a mutual connect with a number of startups. Every cohort, for example, for a Bionet program has 10 startups. So each of these 10 startups, one is doing a protein platform, another one is doing microproteins, another one startup wants to do single cell proteins. So each one is having a different kind of product, and they become, for example, Genexus Biotech is having a fermenter facility for 200 liters. It might help a startup with a Terrameter who wants to use it as an MVP. So this is a cohort-based mentoring where the startups have a interaction between themselves, physical and virtual. So they are able to connect on what their needs and requirements are and whether the other startup is able to help. And we are also helping at different levels. Then there's a need-based mentoring. Then we saw another startup which we see in the sense is one startup I would say in the sense is for specifically looking at they want to generate carbon credits out of it. The objective of creating a protein was to create carbon credits. I told them, do you understand the carbon market space enough to see on how much credits you can get? Do you know who are the buyers of the market? So what we did is a background activity of looking at which are the carbon credit purchasers for the different kinds of alternative protein segment, and how much of credits they get. And we are mentoring them on that aspect. I would like to not disclose at that level because right now to the startup. And then what is the technical support? Technical support, I would say Indiagram is more of a business incubator. Technical support, I think incubators like C-Camp, or I would say in the sense IIT Madras have a good setup in terms of looking at taking these startups at advising them on the different types of techniques on how they can look at. One important thing is to look at while looking at technical support, while we have these very good facilities at I have mentioned. What you also need to look at, like kind of identify what are all the technologies which are being built globally. For example, I'm an alumnus of Wageningen University. So where we are building certain kinds of protein for digital twins in the alternative protein segment is where is the rightly built. This is the right kind of market. And secondly, while you're looking at validation, you need to see pilots and validation is a very important thing. Who we are validating? Is it an Indian client or European client? Fermentech Labs is an interesting startup of ours who has done validation with a European client for their enzymes being created through a solid state fermentation process. And the client is in Europe. And now what happens is the visibility of the Indian investor for a pilot testing in Europe. They don't get to interact with them that much and they don't understand the European market that much. So the startup was wondering, like, how do I raise more funds now from an Indian ecosystem? Because how the VC didn't understand how the investment would grow in Europe, because he's looking at a European-based business activity for an Indian startup. That is something you need to look at. What kind of mentoring is important, even in an investor connect. Who is the right kind of investor for me is more like a marriage. I think it is much bigger than a marriage because they are going to stay with you and they're going to help you throughout, and they are going to make sure that you are successful, not only as an entrepreneur, but the whole business is successful. It's making sure the livelihood of, if you want to grow your company to 500 people, the investor connects on the right kind of partners are helping 500 families together. So I think that is even a bigger relationship than sometimes the marriage, I would say. A client acquisition is another part which a lot of incubators need to help out. So which are the industries which need to reach out, and also make sure that they are able to actively look at the R&D which is being done in different kinds of companies to make sure that um, this technology would help this industry. That is the main service an incubator has to offer. This enzyme which is created from this fermentation technology is useful for food processing. This enzyme is useful for dyeing. This enzyme is useful for, I would say, in the sense is cleaning, whatever. So you have to identify so the right kind of industries to be connected for the at the market linkage. I mentioned FPO linkages here because Indiagram Labs boasts of a very good farmer connect for the past 2 decades with over 6 lakh farming communities across India, and we've been very closely working. And from there is where we have to take it to different kinds of series, Series A, Series B, Series C is where we would like to take this startups from. So I would go with respect to taking the incubator, getting the technical expertise and the business advisory. The R&D, I would say, as Dr. Nitya has highlighted, in the sense is look at the right kind of partners on that and looking at due diligence and make sure that your startup is successful at a at different points at a funding opportunity level. The most important part is to identify which are the industries which a lot of investors are funding. I can even share the database of some investors if for the participants to look at like kind of a protein-based segment as well, so that they can understand which investor to approach at which stage, so that they'll get a clarity on how much they want to raise at what period of time. Culture is something which is very important. So do they help you on a weekly basis? Do they help you on a daily basis? Do they help you on a case-by-case basis? What kind of engagement is done to the startup? What kind of support? What kind of infra and network? So most important, I would say, is like kind of how much time they are willing to dedicate to you, what kind of network access is provided to you, and how much of engagement is given to you would be the most important aspect apart from the funding opportunities which are opened up through the incubator. So finding a startup, it will be very critical to make sure a clear roadmap to be communicated in terms of funding. Only then the funding is possible. Finding early stage startups is important, and connecting to the right investors, I would say, in the sense is get your business concept refined as I highlighted earlier. What I would say in the sense is in the monitoring process on making sure the startup, would say funding makes a very big component, because these protein-based startups are going to take not immediate revenue in 3 months or 4 months. They're going to look at about say 2-3 years at least before they start making revenue. So for anything in the program component is to create a strong program on what they need to do at different MVP stages and create a strong investor connect for different points after successful MVPs, and their progress is being monitored. So what you ask for an incubator when you ask is like kind of at what stage should I raise fund, and what are the grants available right now? For example, Startup India Seed Fund Scheme provides a 20 lakh grant. Then we have BIRAC programs which are providing multiple grants. Then you have RKVY program for agri-tech based startup as well. So you can look at different grant programs by approaching based on your need-based requirement. I would say what we have done at Indiagram Labs is the protein segment is one of the segments where we are an agri-tech incubator. What we have done is we have created a setup where before the farm, inside the farm, after the farm has 3 aspects, and secondary agriculture. So this secondary agriculture is where we look at protein segment predominantly and would look at this segment very keenly. In our experience, as Dr. Nitya has highlighted, the protein space is growing very fast. I would say much more faster than what we had anticipated. Look at, in my humble submission, is to not just look at the Indian market, but look at an ASEAN market at a large level for the startups to progress, and make sure that you're able to take the product to an ASEAN market, because it's easier to with the regulatory approval as well. If you're looking to Western Europe and US, the markets could take a longer time. ASEAN markets are easier and the markets are very large and easy to accept these technologies. If you have some Singapore-based connections as well, this would help because it opens a gateway to Asia. So that is how we have segmented our activities, and I would like to look at like kind of our success stories is looking at the startups who have raised about $450 million, 6 lakh farmers have been benefited, number of FPOs which have reached, and n number of jobs which were created through our exercise. So looking at the right kind of partnerships on what you get out of these partnerships is very important, to where we have made multiple engagements with different kinds of incubators, accelerators throughout our setup, which our startups are getting directly benefited. So do reach out to us, and happy connecting you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bharathwaj. That was really an interactive talk, and thank you so much for connecting with the chickpea all throughout your talk. That was super informative for me. So you have a question here on the Q&A session. So how can incubators foster a community to help scale nascent sectors like alternate proteins? Is that a consideration, for instance, talking to governments, forming a working group, etc.?
I would say to foster a nascent segment like alternative proteins, I would say as incubators, it is important to have a government intervention to look at a focus. What does the government want to do it for specifically? I would look at, for example, right now, I don't want to get into the political side of it, but what we are looking at more from a vegan perspective is a different kind of product where we are spending a lot in terms of importing a lot of items, so that bovine serum albumin is one import which we are doing in a large level. Then we are looking at importing, in the sense is certain kinds of hide membrane technologies which we are importing from outside. And what we want to do is make sure that incubators are emphasized to look at a special funding scheme for specifically to look at those occurring expenses in the government segment, the government sectors, where the import duties are relaxed, and also looking at more amount of innate technologies to be fostered on that domain.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. And you also have another question. An anonymous attendee has asked you to share the investor list who support alternate proteins.
Yeah, I will share the same to Fathima, and she will be reaching out to the person. If you could share your email ID along with the question, it will be easier, so that it could reach the right kind of person.
Yeah, alternatively, you can send it to me. So anyway, I will be sending the resources to all the attendees so they can have access to it. Let me just check if there's any more questions for you. Yeah, that's about it, Mr. Bharathwaj. And thank you so much, Dr. Nitya, for typing in all your answers. And that kind of brings us to the end of this webinar session. Just before closing, I just want to share some resources with you, the GFI India resources. We have updated ecosystem toolkit, which has several databases. We have about 6 databases, which are Smart Protein Company database, fundraising database, investor, accelerator, incubator, ecosystem, and talent database. All the details on how to use these databases and how you can be benefited by them are on the website. Links will be shared with you on the chat and also on the follow-up email. And we also have a report. It's the incubation report, which is kind of an overview of the challenges that smart protein startups have faced and the recommendations on how they can overcome this. And again, links will be shared with you. And that's about it. We have planned for a networking session post this webinar. And since it has a bit overrun, we are planning to move this networking session to a later date, and we will inform you all via mail. So all the attendees can have a even more leisure networking session. So that brings us to the end of this webinar. So is there any final questions the participants want to ask the panelists? You can go ahead right now. Or else, can panelists turn on their camera? I just want to take a snap for socials. So Gen-Z of me, I know. Please. Yeah. Anna, could you take the screenshot?
Yes. Tayan's taking a screenshot, but I've talked to Nitya, Mr. Bharathwaj, Deb, if you could all have a big smile in 3, 2, and 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Yeah, I'll also email about the networking session with you, panelists, so you can also join in and interact with all these attendees and also those who couldn't unfortunately attend this event. And that's about it. We don't have any more questions. And thank you so much for joining this session and for having really Each of the talks were in your own unique style, and I can relate to each of your talks, and it was super informative. And this video will be uploaded on YouTube, and I will share the links with you so you can share with your network as well. And let me just stop the recording and